So in general, when we're talking about this, the question comes up of what even is world building? What are we talking about? What is this show? What is life?
Baby, don't hurt me.
Somebody had to build this world, you know. We don't want to get too far, but you know,
This is now a theology podcast.
there we go. But in general, what is world building? So, does anyone want to take a good swing at the definition of world building for someone else to then tear down afterwards? If not, then I can do the torn down one.
Sure. So I'm gonna work with this going off the cuff here.
Yes.
World building is, I'm going to say, the art of portraying a reality, whether real or generally fictional.
Okay. It has to be fictional.
So I guess reality would not be the right word there, but I would need to tweak that because fictional reality is by definition not reality.
Do you have to do if you're writing a memoir, do you have to do world building? Or is it just like
Yes, because you are portraying a universe, if you will.
Okay.
I think world building is it's very much like verbal painting. It's giving a picture to your audience, whether that be the readers, whether that be people at your D&D game or people coming to watch your film. It is the canvas on which everything happens.
Yeah. Yeah, when we talk about setting and letting people actually understand where they are, where's the story taking place, that's when we get to world building. Because even in that sense, you would say a history book kind of has to do some world building.
Yeah.
Yes.
Talking about, okay, this was the state during World War One, because otherwise it's kind of hard to tell what's going on.
Or if you are describing a culture that's different to the culture that the reader is familiar with,
Yeah.
that's also world building in a way.
Right.
But we're not talking about any of those ones. We don't care about, none of us are out here trying to write a memoir, as far as I know.
Nope, not yet.
Or a history book, as far as I know.
Nope.
So we're mostly talking about writing and RPGs. And,
Fiction.
Fiction, places where there are world building.
Yep.
So the big question there, when we're talking about what is world building, is a question of where does world building stop and storytelling begin? Because we're not just going to be talking about the in-depth parts of every story that's ever been told. We're talking about building a world.
Yeah.
So in what ways do these things is this a versus? Is it world building versus storytelling?
I think you can't have one without the other. I think they are linked. You can't separate the two. World building without storytelling is just a physics simulator. The way that I would kind of describe it is even our world, which we would define as reality, is the way that we live our lives is based on stories. We all kind of live our lives based off of stories, and I think the same thing goes with world building. Is world building without storytelling, it doesn't really exist.
Okay. Yeah. So in that way, you would say that every single story needs world building.
Yeah.
It might be in the forefront in some cases.
Right.
It might be the minor backdrop that we have when we're reading something or watching a movie. They don't have a lot of time to explain everything that's going on in every single movie or TV show or anything. But you need some level of world building for any story that needs to be told.
Yep.
So I would say that world building would be, that is the part of the story that exists outside of the tale being told.
Sure.
Okay. Well,
because all stories exist within a context.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
And in some, that context is very implicit or assumed to be understood by the reader. And in others, it's, well, this exists in a context that you are not very familiar with. So I'm going to spend time explaining things about this world to you and allowing you to conceive of it as an independent entity, so to speak, in which this story that I'm telling you is taking place.
For a clear example, I can't remember, in Star Wars Episode 4, like the first one, does it begin with the title crawl, or is that only in Episode 5?
No, it begins with a title crawl.
I thought it does. Yeah, because they felt the need to open up the story.
But here's the context of what's going on.
Yeah, rather than just you dropped in some random place with lasers. It's like, no, we have to. Okay, here's some setting detail. not everything does that. Not every story needs to do
No.
that. But yeah, I think that makes sense in terms of the. Oh, there's one other point that you said though that I thought was interesting. You said it's the world building is what the part. Say that again. Was it the part that takes place outside the story?
So the way that I believe I originally phrased it was something along as of it's the part of the story that takes place outside of the tale being told.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which puts a separation between story and tale.
Okay, but that's which I think is interesting. But does that mean, in your mind, just the way you're defining this, as soon as we surface something in the story, it's no longer world building? That there's a separation between what is told versus what simply exists in the context that informs the story being told.
So no, because everything that is being told is a part of the larger story.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. The tale. Yes.
So it's more to Braylon's point of the world building is the canvas on which a story is told.
Yeah, and you could have. I mean, you can take even the example that you used of Star Wars of like we have this massive galaxy that we have stories that are, some of them are interlinked, and then some of them are just like, yeah, there's this thing that's happening over here. Doesn't really involve anybody else, or maybe
No.
it involves a couple minor characters who pop in for a cameo because that sells.
Yeah.
But it doesn't really have, it doesn't have a bearing on the overarching story of kind of the Skywalker saga. That's like the primary thing that we have. It's you can just have like, okay, this is in the Star Wars universe.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. That's all it is.
Right. And it's good.
So for me, something like the Ewoks are living on this moon is I consider that to be part of the story,
Sure.
even if it is not really part of the tale. Right? It's not part of the Skywalker saga in as much as, yes, he interacts with them for this little bit here, but the idea is that there's this society that exists beyond this bit that just Luke interacts with, and that I would also consider to be part of the story in a way. Does that make sense? Is that a fair definition, or do you put that as, well, no, this is its own category, and the Skywalker saga is the story?
Well, I think you can have multiple stories that are interlinked or running parallel or running, in any number of different directions that intersect or don't. In that aspect, it's like, okay, we've got Wicket the Ewok. He's got his own story that we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the story that we are being told.
Yes.
But that story could be told. He has a story. He has world building. He has all of these things around him. It's just, it has not been put to film or, to the best of my knowledge, to writing. Maybe there's fan fiction out there about
someone
him.
wrote a novel at some point that involved Wicket. There's too many.
Yeah.
But I think that brings up an interesting point between what is and isn't part of the story, because especially at least in my experience, doing world building, a lot of it is more, one of the primary focuses for me is building the illusion of depth, because you don't actually have time to write Wicket's story. I barely have enough time to write Luke's story.
Right.
We got things to do.
Yeah.
So instead, it's like, okay, I need you to be curious enough about the things that are taking place off screen that it's interesting to you.
Yeah.
But it's might be an inch deep in places.
Sure.
In some places, it has to be a lot deeper, because otherwise the story starts to lose a lot of coherency.
Yep.
But in most places, it is, how do we pretend that this is really, that there's a lot going on in this canvas, when really I've painted this and where the the light will cover, and everything else is actually just blank.
Yep.